Infinite rooms. In the back rooms, everything starts with a simple idea that turned into a collective nightmare on the internet. A guy slips out of reality and falls into a place that looks like an empty office with yellow walls and a silence that's more disturbing than any noise. This concept came straight from the short film, The Backrooms Found Footage, created by Kane Parsons, who was only 16 at the time. In the original video, we follow what feels like lost footage where the character wanders aimlessly through this endless labyrinth, trying to figure out where he is, while the feeling that something could appear at any moment just keeps growing. There's no explanation, no clear way out, just repetition and paranoia. And that's exactly what made the video blow up on YouTube. What's even more interesting is that this raw, almost homemade vibe got so much attention that it turned into a movie project with A24, the same studio behind Hereditary and Midsommar. And the craziest part, Kane Parsons himself was chosen to direct the feature film, and it's set to release this year. It's rare to see someone go straight from YouTube to directing a film at that level while keeping their own vision. The movie expands the idea of the back rooms, adding more context, possible creatures, and a much larger scale, but without losing what made it work: the fear of emptiness, the unknown, and that awful feeling of being trapped in a place that simply doesn't make sense. The beginning of Saw. In Saw, two men wake up trapped in an abandoned bathroom, with no idea how they got there, and soon realize they're part of a game, created by someone who tests how far they're willing to go to survive. Before all the success, it started with a short film of about 9 minutes, created by James Wan and Lee Wunnell. And here's an important detail: they didn't have a studio, they didn't have a big budget, so they needed something impactful enough to sell the idea fast. The short focuses on an interrogation scene where a man named David describes how he managed to escape a trap set by this mysterious killer. And it's not just any trap. It's actually the first version of the famous reverse bear trap, which later became one of the franchise's biggest symbols. Even though it's short, it already brings almost everything we recognize today: the dirty atmosphere, the confined spaces, that constant feeling of desperation. Even the Billy puppet appears, still in a simpler form, but with the same disturbing purpose. It's interesting to see how almost nothing changed at its core. And to be honest, this short is one of the best examples of how to sell an idea in a short amount of time. They don't explain everything, they don't show a huge universe, they just present a strong concept and let the discomfort do the rest. It worked so well that it quickly caught the attention of studios, and not long after, the 2004 feature film became a reality. The rest is history. Game over. There's something in the dark. In Lights Out, the horror revolves around something everyone has experienced: turning off the lights and feeling like you're not alone. The 2016 film introduces Rebecca's family, a young woman who distanced herself from her mother because of strange issues involving a presence that only appears in the dark. This entity, called Diana, isn't just some random thing. She's directly connected to her mother Sophie's past, who struggles with psychological issues and insists the creature is real. Keeping the lights on literally becomes a matter of life or death. All of this came from a 3-minute short film, also called Lights Out, directed by David F. Sandberg. And this short gets straight to the point in an insane way. A woman turns off the light, sees a silhouette, turns it back on, it's gone, turns it off again, it's closer, until the jump scare hits. There's no complex story, just pure tension, and that simplicity is exactly what made it go viral. James Wan himself saw the potential and decided to produce the feature version, expanding the idea with story, characters, and an explanation for Diana. Result: over $140 million at the box office. The Shadow Mother. In Mama, two sisters disappear and are found years later living in isolation, completely disconnected from reality. But they weren't alone during that time. The entity that took care of them is still there, and when they return to society, that presence comes with them. The origin of all this is a short film under 3 minutes directed by Andres Muschietti, and this is where it gets interesting. Even with so little time, the short builds insane tension. We see the two children inside a house trying to escape a strange figure that moves in an almost impossible way. There's no explanation, no detailed story, just a constant sense of danger and a presence that always seems one step ahead. That video was enough to catch the attention of Guillermo del Toro, who decided to produce the feature film. And that says a lot, because he has a very specific eye for this kind of atmospheric horror. In the 2013 movie, the story is expanded, bringing more context about the girls, the new family trying to take care of them, and the origin of the entity. One interesting point is how the film tries to balance horror with a more emotional side, something the short doesn't need at all. In the original, the fear is direct and non-stop. In the movie, there's an attempt to give depth to Mama, almost as if she isn't just a threat. Even so, the core remains the same, a presence that shouldn't be there, but refuses to leave. The Cursed Cabin. In The Evil Dead, a group isolated in the middle of the forest deals with an invisible presence moving through the trees, and once it finds someone, there's no going back. Everything revolves around this entity that invades bodies and turns the night into a nightmare inside an isolated cabin. Before the 1981 classic, Sam Raimi had already tested this idea in The Short Within the Woods, created as a way to prove that the concept worked, and what's most interesting is how improvised it was. The film was shot over a single weekend with a very low budget and a simple camera. Even so, you can already see almost the entire identity of the franchise there. Bruce Campbell was already involved, along with Ellen Sandweiss, and the core dynamic is already present. People isolated, something ancient being awakened, and an unseen force taking over. The short runs about 30 minutes and works as a direct draft of what would come next. The famous camera rushing through the forest, simulating the entity's point of view, already appears here. That detail became one of the most recognizable trademarks of the franchise, and even with technical limitations, the energy is insane. One interesting detail is how this project was used to convince investors. It wasn't just a creative test, it was literally a tool to raise money, and it worked. Shortly after, The Evil Dead became a reality, and went on to become one of the most influential horror films ever, and you can see that the essence was already there from the very beginning. The call is coming from inside. You're alone in a huge house at night. The phone rings, and the voice on the other end asks something simple.
Why haven't you checked the children?
In When a Stranger Calls, we follow a babysitter who starts receiving strange phone calls while watching two kids, until she realizes the threat isn't outside, it's inside the house. This idea comes directly from the short film The Sitter, released in 1977. And here's the most interesting part. The opening minutes of the 1979 movie are basically a direct recreation of that short. The setup is simple and extremely effective. An isolated house, a vulnerable character, and calls that become more and more disturbing. No monster, no supernatural explanation, just tension building with every ring. The short is about 20 minutes long and focuses entirely on the babysitter being psychologically pressured. Each call feels closer, more personal, until it reaches a reveal that became one of the most famous in horror. And the impact was so strong that it basically carried the entire feature film. An interesting detail is how this concept influenced many other movies afterward. The idea of danger coming from within, from a place that should be safe, became a formula still used today. The Cursed Smile. In Smile, everything starts with a completely desperate patient inside a therapy office. She claims something is following her, always with a disturbing smile. Psychiatrist Rose witnesses this up close. And after that, the same pattern starts happening to her. This opening comes directly from the short film Laura Hasn't Slept, also directed by Parker Finn, and the short already delivers the essence of the horror in just a few minutes. It follows Laura, an exhausted woman seeking help because she can't sleep without seeing a smiling figure in the dark. During her session with the therapist, things start to feel off. Her dialogue becomes disconnected, her behavior shifts, and suddenly you realize the situation has completely spiraled out of control.
Awfully tired, Laura. I have just the thing to help you sleep.
Stay away from me!
It's the kind of scene that starts simple and ends up really disturbing. The feature film takes that foundation and turns it into something bigger, creating a kind of curse that spreads from person to person. The actress from the short, Caitlin Stasey, even appears at the beginning of the movie reprising her role, directly connecting the two versions. It almost works like a hidden continuation. The Empty House. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, going to call your parents, and realizing they're just gone. In Skinamarink, two children are trapped inside their house while everything around them starts changing in strange ways. Doors vanish, windows disappear, and the silence becomes suffocating. There's no clear explanation, just the feeling that something is controlling that place. Before the 2022 film, director Kyle Edward Ball had already explored this idea in the short film Heck, released on YouTube. And what's most interesting is that the short is basically the movie. Same concept, same strange and uncomfortable style. The difference is that Heck focuses on a single child and develops the situation a bit more directly, while the feature film stretches that experience to the extreme. And here's what makes this project so different. In both the short and the film, there are almost no traditional scenes. The camera stays still in corners of the house, showing ceilings, floors, and empty hallways. You rarely see faces. Everything is built through sound, silence, and strange angles that leave you just as lost as the characters. This style was already fully defined in the short. It wasn't something that came later with a bigger budget. And to be honest, this is the kind of movie that really divides people. Some find it extremely disturbing, while others can't even make it to the end. The Price of Silence. In Piggy, we follow Sarah, an isolated teenager who suffers constant bullying because of her appearance. During what seems like a normal day, she witnesses the kidnapping of the girls who torment her and has to decide whether to do something or stay silent. This idea came directly from the short film Cerdita, released in 2018 by the same director, Carlota Pereda. And here the focus is entirely on a moment at the pool. You can feel Sarah's discomfort the entire time, being ignored, judged, and put down. When the kidnapping happens, the film doesn't treat it like a typical scare. It becomes a dilemma. She had the chance to help, but at the same time, those people never did anything for her. And that makes everything heavier. In the 2022 feature film, the story expands a lot. The same actress, Laura Galan, returns as Sarah, but now we see more of her life, her family, and especially the consequences of that moment. It's not just about what happened, it's about what comes after. An interesting detail is that the short won the Goya Award, which is basically the Spanish Oscars. That already shows the impact it had even before the feature existed. The Hidden Monster. In The Babadook, we have a child claiming there's a monster inside the closet, and the worst part is the mother starts to realize he might be right. In the feature film, we follow Amelia, a woman overwhelmed after her husband's death, trying to take care of her son, Samuel, who is terrified of a monster inside the house. But over time, that fear stops feeling like imagination and starts affecting both of them more and more intensely. Before the 2014 film, this idea already existed in The Short Monster, directed by Jennifer Kent, and even though it's very short, it delivers an uncomfortable tension from start to finish. Shot in black and white, the short focuses entirely on the strained relationship between mother and son, inside a closed environment that feels suffocating for both of them. The boy insists something is hidden and the mother tries to stay in control, but she's clearly on the edge of a breakdown. Here, the monster appears more directly, without much mystery or symbolism. In the feature, everything gains more layers. The Babadook stops being just a physical presence and starts representing grief, exhaustion, and the protagonist's emotional deterioration. That completely changes the kind of fear the film creates. The short already had the emotional foundation, but the movie pushes it to the limit. The Evil Clown. Terrifier arrived to introduce yet another clown that would leave a mark on pop culture. In the feature film, during Halloween night, two friends cross paths with a strange clown named Art, and what seems like just another bizarre encounter turns into a relentless chase. But what's most interesting is that this character didn't come out of nowhere. Before the 2016 film, director Damien Leone had been building Art little by little in smaller projects. The first version appeared in The Ninth Circle back in 2008, where he was still just another strange figure among other creatures. Nothing iconic yet. Then in 2011 came the short Terrifier, and that's when things changed. Here, Art fully takes control of the story, stalking a woman at a gas station with that silent, completely unpredictable behavior that became his trademark. This short basically works as a direct test for what would come in the feature film. And before making it to theaters, he also appeared in All Hallows Eve, an anthology film that brought these shorts together and introduced the character to a wider audience. It was like a warm-up. The most interesting detail is that the first Terrifier feature was only made because of fans through crowdfunding, and that explains the film's style. Zero filter, zero concern about pleasing everyone. It's raw, strange, and kind of uncomfortable to watch. The Pact. In The Pact, we follow Annie, a woman who reluctantly returns to the house where she grew up after her mother's death. As soon as she arrives, she discovers that her sister and cousin have mysteriously disappeared inside the house. No one can explain it. So the tension builds fast. Alone there, Annie starts to realize she's not as alone as she thought. Doors opening, strange noises, a presence that seems to be watching her every move. She begins digging into her family's past and finds things her mother clearly tried to hide. This film came from a short released in 2011 by the same director, Nicholas McCarthy. It's about 11 minutes long, and it doesn't offer immediate explanations. The short doesn't waste time setting rules or building a huge universe. It just throws you into the situation and lets the atmosphere do the work. And it works. The short made such an impact at the Sundance Festival that it turned into this feature film the following year. Halloween Rules. In Trick or Treat, multiple stories happen at the same time during the same night, all connected by a silent presence named Sam, who basically acts as the spirit of Halloween, punishing those who disrespect its traditions. Before the 2007 film, this character already existed in an animated short called Season's Greetings, created by Michael Dougherty back in college. And even though it's a simple hand-drawn animation, you can already clearly see who Sam is. In the short, he's followed by a stranger during the night and seems about to be killed until the twist reveals him carrying the man's body inside the bag. What's most interesting is how this started as an academic project and ended up becoming the foundation of one of the most cult Halloween movies ever. Sam barely speaks, doesn't explain anything, but his presence connects all the stories, as if he's always watching who deserves to escape and who doesn't. And here's a cool detail. The concept of Halloween rules comes strongly from this origin. Simple things like respecting traditions or keeping the spirit of the holiday gain an almost supernatural weight. Real vampires. In What We Do in the Shadows, it starts with vampires sharing an apartment, arguing about who's going to do the dishes and trying to act normal in society, completely flipping the expectations of a traditional horror movie. We follow a group of vampires who have lived together for centuries, dealing with ridiculously human problems while trying to maintain their supernatural habits. This idea came from a 2005 short film called What We Do in the Shadows, created by Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement. And even back then, the format was already set. Everything is presented as a mockumentary, with interviews, awkward moments, and situations that feel improvised. The main characters already existed with almost the same dynamic, including the oldest vampire, the rebellious one, and the one completely lost in the modern world. One interesting detail is that some names and traits changed later. Jermaine Clement's character, for example, was called Vulvus in the short before becoming Vladislav in the feature, but the essence stayed exactly the same. Powerful vampires placed in ordinary situations, creating a contrast that's way funnier than forced jokes. And honestly, that's exactly where the success comes from. The film doesn't try to scare you all the time. It plays with the absurdity of the situation. Watching immortal creatures argue about house rules or struggle to get into parties without being invited ends up being more memorable than a lot of serious horror films. And it all started as a simple experiment. But what about you? Do you know any short film that should become a movie? Let us know in the comments. On the screen, there's a video where we show terrifying short horror movies that you need to see. Click and watch. I'll see you there.